In this video, we are going to look at how to configure floating static rod for IP version 4. The floating static rod is a static rod that is used to provide a backup path to a primary static or dynamic rod. So the floating static rod is only used when the primary rod is not available. We are going to do the demonstration on Packet Tracer. We'll see how the floating static rod be used as a backup path. The floating static rod is configured with a higher administrative distance than the primary rod. So we know the meaning of the AD. The AD represents the trustworthiness of a rod. When router has multiple paths toward to the same destination, the router is going to choose the path with the lowest AD. So by default, a static rod has an AD1. To configure floating static rod, we'll change the AD to a value higher than 1, make it become a backup rod for dynamic routing protocol or the primary static rod. So just recall the syntax to configure static rod for IP version 4. In the global configuration mode, we configure with IP rod. That will be the remote network with a subnet mask, and we can configure the static rod with the next hop IP address or exit interface. The static rod can be configured with a distance. The distance is optional. If we didn't configure the distance, by default, the distance will be 1. When we configure the distance as a value other than 1, we make it become a floating static rod. Let's see how we can configure floating static rod. In the previous video, we did look at how to configure static rod and also the default route on the 3 routers. So on R1, I can check my routing table by using show IP route. It has a default route through interface at 00 will send the traffic to the web server. So anything is not matched with this routing table will send it through interface at 000. Now I add another link, and instead to help at 000, I also add another link with at 001. So we can use the show IP interface brief, and we check the other interface at 001, which has IP address 10.2.12.1. We look at the router 2. The router 2 is the same, and it has the interface at 011, that is the interface connect to router 1. Interface at 011 be configured with IP address 10.2.12.2. On router 2's routing table, we can just check the static route be configured. It says to reach network 192.168.1.0, we are going to send the traffic to 10.0.12.1. So that is R1's interface at 00's IP address. Now let's configure a floating static rod on R1 and R2. On R1, I'm going to configure another static default rod with IP rod 0.0.0.0, 0.0.0.0. This time, the exit interface, I'm going to use as 0.0.1. Also change the AD value to 5. So let's check the routing table when we use the show IP route. If I just want to check the static route, and it still shows the default route has an interface as 000. So when we do the show IP route 0.0.0.0.0, it shows the AD is as 1. But we do have the second static default route be configured. We can use the show run include IP route. We just want to look at the configuration for static route. We have 2 static default route be configured. One is through interface at 00. Another one is interface at 001, which has an AD file. On R2, I'm going to add another static route entry through the second link. So on R2, we configure IP route 192.168.1.0, that is a network attached to router 1. And the next hop IP address this time is 10.2.12.1, but we set up the AD as a file. So check the routing table, look at the static route, and there's no change. Let's see what will happen when we shut down the interface at 000. Before we shut down the interface, we want to verify our PC can ping the web server. So I do the ping the web server IP address and I get reply. Now, when PC send the ping, the traffic will go to router 1 because router 1 is a default gateway. Then router 1 is going to check the routing table, find out to reach the remote network. I'm going to send the traffic out of interface as 000. Now let's see what will happen when we shut down the interface as 000. I shut down the interface at 00 is not available anymore. Now we verify the ping to see we still can ping the remote host or not. So from PC, I'm going to ping the web server IP address. I still have reply. Now check the routing table to see which path is in the routing table. When we do the show IP route, you can see this time we have the static default route. It sends through interface as 001. So the static route through S001 is a floating static route. We can use a show IP route 0.0.0.0 to verify it. Now you can see this static route has an AD file, and because we change the AD, we make it become a floating static route. When the primary path is not available, the backup path will be installed in the routing table through interface at 001. That is how we can configure a floating static route. In another video, I'm going to show you how to configure static and default route for IP version 6. Thank you for watching.